Welcome to Washington Today on C-SPAN Radio for Thursday, December 23rd, 2021. A jury convicts former Minneapolis police officer Kim Potter of manslaughter in the shooting and killing of black motorist Daunte Wright. She testified that she had mistook her service weapon for a taser. Early data on COVID-19 Omicron variant out of Great Britain showing that people with that variant less likely to need hospitalization than those who contracted the Delta variant. Here in the U.S., the FDA authorizes a second antiviral pill to treat COVID-19. This from drug maker Merck. It joins the one approved yesterday from Pfizer. President Joe Biden signing a bill that increases research funding for the neurodegenerative illness ALS and provides patients with early access to promising treatments. And Russian President Vladimir Putin holding his traditional year-end news conference, blaming the U.S. and other Western nations for the military tensions along the Russian-Ukrainian border, saying it's NATO expansion that needs to roll back. From the Minneapolis Star-Tribune, jurors convicted former Brooklyn Center police officer Kimberly Potter of both manslaughter counts filed against her Thursday in the fatal shooting of Daunte Wright, making her the third officer in Minnesota to be convicted of killing a civilian on the job. Potter showed little emotion with her gaze cast downward as Judge Regina Chu read the guilty verdicts for first and second-degree manslaughter. Her attorneys placed their hands on either of her shoulders. That from the Star-Tribune. Here's what it sounded like in the courtroom.
Ms. Potter, please rise. I'm now going to read your verdicts as it will appear in the permanent court records of Hennepin County. In the matter of State of Minnesota versus Kimberly Potter, court file number 27CR217490, we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the first degree while committing a misdemeanor on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And the verdict was agreed to at the hour of 11:40 a.m. and signed by the jury person on 12/23/21. The verdict on count 2 is we, the jury, on the charge of manslaughter in the second degree, culpable negligence on or about April 11, 2021, in Hennepin County, State of Minnesota, find the defendant guilty. And that verdict was agreed to at 10:30 a.m. on 12/21/21. Members of the jury, is this your true and correct verdict? So say you one, and so say you all.
Yes.
Okay, you may be seated.
Judge Regina Chu, Hennepin County District Court in Minnesota. More from the Minneapolis Star-Tribune. They write that Potter's defense argued that she had the legal right to use a taser or deadly force in the form of a gun because Wright resisted arrest and put officers' lives at risk. This all happened during a traffic stop. They told jurors that Potter meant to use her taser when she fired her handgun once into Wright's chest and that her mistake was not a crime. Prosecutors argued that Potter acted recklessly and negligently. Outside the courtroom, some reaction to the verdict from Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison.
At this moment, I ask us all to reflect upon the life of Daunte Wright and who he could have been had he had a chance to grow up. At 20, Daunte could have done anything. Maybe he could have gone into the building trades. Maybe he could have started a business. What we know is that he was a young, new dad, and he was so proud of his son, Daunte Jr. We know that he loved his mom, and he loved his dad, and he loved his siblings, and his big, beautiful family. He had his whole life in front of him, and he could have become anyone. All of us miss out on who Daunte could have been. And no one has missed him more than his parents, Katie and Aubrey, and their children. I'm very mindful today that there will be an empty chair at the Wright family dinner during the holidays. and that saddens me. And once again, I extend my deepest condolences to you. With the jury finding Kimberly Potter guilty today of manslaughter in the first degree and manslaughter in the second degree in connection with Daunte's death, we have a degree of accountability for Daunte's death. Accountability is not justice. Justice is restoration. Justice would be restoring Daunte to life and making the Wright family whole again. Justice is beyond the reach that we have in this life for Daunte. But accountability is an important step, a critical, necessary step on the road to justice for us all. I want to thank the jury for their careful attention and deliberation and for their service to the people of Minnesota. I want to thank all of the witnesses who testified and who came forward with what they knew about this case. I especially want to thank my remarkable team. When I took this case, I said it would be difficult to prosecute because history has shown that trying cases like this one is difficult. This team did not shy away from the challenge, and the people of Hennepin County and the American people and the people of Minnesota, what they saw in the courtroom was the fruit of many, many hours of labor and hard work and planning.
Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison. Kimberly Potter is 49 years old. She faces about 7 years in prison on the most serious count under the state sentencing guidelines, but prosecutors say they will be seeking a longer term. She's being held without bail and will be sentenced on February 18th. From Associated Press, preliminary data suggests that people with the Omicron variant of the coronavirus are between 50% and 70% less likely to need hospitalization than those with the Delta strain, Britain's public health agency said Thursday. The United Kingdom Health Security Agency findings add to emerging evidence that Omicron produces milder illness than other variants, but also spreads faster and better evades vaccines. The British Health Secretary is Sajid Javid. He posted this video.
Since we've learnt about this variant, our strategy has been to buy time to assess it and to build our defences. There's still a lot of uncertainty, but we are learning more all the time. And there have been reports, some of them published yesterday, on the risk of hospitalisation. And also the UK Health Security Agency will be publishing its own analysis on the risk of hospitalisation later today. Now, these early reports, they do suggest that the risk of hospitalisation is lower than Delta. And that, of course, is good. That's encouraging news, they're not very clear yet, though, on by how much that risk is reduced. And we do know with Omicron that it does spread a lot more quickly, is a lot more infectious than Delta. So any advantage gained from a reduced risk of hospitalization needs to be set against that. And we know, for example, if a much smaller percentage of people are at the risk of hospitalization, if that's a smaller percentage of a much larger number, there could be still significant hospitalization. What my scientists have been absolutely clear to me about, and just from my latest meeting with them yesterday evening, having looked at these reports, is that our best way to deal with this, the best way to protect ourselves is through vaccinations and, in particular, the booster program. It is now even more important to come forward and to get boosted. And the NHS, the armed forces, our volunteers, they're doing a fantastic job in increasing capacity, hitting new records every day. But we need more people to come forward and get boosted, protect themselves, their community, their loved ones. You know, really the best Christmas present you could give anyone this Christmas is to get boosted now.
The British Health Secretary Sajid Javid posting that video. Great Britain has reported more than 100,000 new cases of COVID-19 for the first time since widespread testing was available. United States, meanwhile, surpassing its summer peak of COVID-19 infections. According to New York Times data, the 7-day average now more than 168,000 cases. Those are total cases. They don't distinguish between any mild infections of people who have been vaccinated and the unvaccinated who are more likely to have severe infections. And the Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington School of Medicine now predicting the U.S. could see as many as 140 million new COVID-19 infections in the first 3 months of 2022. And the peak would be in late January with 2.8 million cases per day. Today, the Food and Drug Administration authorizing a second take-it-home pill to treat COVID-19. This from pharmaceutical company Merck, although AP writes that Pfizer's pill, the other pill, is likely to become the first choice treatment against the virus thanks to its superior benefits and milder side effects. On Merck's pill, its ability to head off severe COVID-19 is much smaller than initially announced, and the drug label will still warn of serious birth defects. Questions about the second pill to the White House press secretary, Jen Psaki.
We've now seen the second COVID-19 treatment pill approved by the government. What is the administration doing to make sure there aren't shortages or that they can address the already existing shortages of those pills? And can you just clarify, will both pills be free for all Americans?
I believe so, and I will quadruple check that, but that has always been our approach. I would note that what we have done is we have purchased 10 million of the Pfizer doses. We know that just over 250,000 of those will be available in January. We will not get the full package of that, I think, until the summer. We've also purchased 3 million Merck doses, which were just approved today, and we expect to get the majority of those by the end of January. I think it's important to note what Dr. Fauci has said a number of times, just in terms of expectations for the American people. It's a very complicated synthetic process to make specifically the Pfizer antiviral. All tools are on the table, including the use of the Defense Production Act to get Pfizer the things they need to produce this antiviral as quickly as possible, but it takes a significant amount of time to do that. That's just science, and we have purchased as much as we can purchase, but we just want to set that expectation. The most important step people can take is to get vaccinated and get boosted.
The White House press secretary Jen Psaki with reporters, part of her daily briefing. On getting vaccinated and getting boosted, Jen Psaki retweeted today a video of former President Donald Trump being interviewed by Candace Owens from the Daily Wire. And Psaki adding this, just going to echo former President Trump here on the safety and efficacy of the vaccines. Merry Christmas Eve Eve. Go get boosted. We'll hear from former President Trump in a moment, but here's the question about this tweet to Jen Psaki.
You guys have been sharing former President Trump's message recently on boosters, and I'm wondering, given the former president's apparent change in tune on this issue over the last week, has there been any renewed contact between President Biden and the former president or your teams?
No, but we are grateful that the former president got the booster. We're also grateful that he made clear in a recent interview that they're effective and they're safe. And that's an important message for anyone to hear. This is not a partisan issue. This is about saving lives, communicating accurate information, pushing back against inaccurate information, and in this particular case, the former president did that. Go ahead.
With the former president defending vaccines, Tuesday, President Biden mentioned that's one of the only things that he actually agrees with Trump on. Would the White House consider a partnership with the former president to get some of those folks that are vaccine hesitant to actually get the jab?
I don't know that we think it requires a partnership. I think we believe that, the former president being out there and stating what is factually accurate about the efficacy of vaccines, of getting boosted, which he recently did, of course, is a good thing, right? And it's a good thing to have a range of voices out there. Democrats, Republicans, independents, celebrities, non-celebrities, whomever people will be listening to out in the country. We continue to believe that the most effective voices are local voices, local people. That's who everybody listens to, people in their community, your neighbor, your friend, your cousin, your pediatrician. But certainly we would applaud and have the former president's comments.
The White House press secretary Jen Psaki. And here's the video of former President Trump and Candace Owens, the interview that Jen Psaki retweeted.
In terms of big pharma, which is a huge topic on the minds of mothers, especially. You're seeing what's happening at these school board meetings. Where do you stand on these vaccine mandates? And obviously, I know that you are pro-vaccine. Obviously, you did everything you could to get this vaccine out. I know where you stand on the vaccine.
It was one of the greatest achievements. We did it in less than 9 months.
To be able to do that. Yeah, but now it's taken a twist, right? It's gotten, now we went from this is a good thing and people should have this option to military men, you're going to have to resign because you're not getting this vaccine. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I stand on, forget about the mandates, that people have to have their freedom, but at the same time, the vaccine is one of the greatest achievements of mankind. We would have had in 1917, remember the Spanish flu, killed perhaps 100 million people. Actually, it ended the First World War because the soldiers were so, a lot of people don't know that. The soldiers got so sick. It was a terrible thing. There were no vaccines. There was no anything. I came up with a vaccine, with 3 vaccines. All are very, very good. Came up with 3 of them in less than 9 months. It was supposed to take 5 to 12 years.
And yet more people have died under COVID this year, by the way, under Joe Biden, than under you. And more people took the vaccine this year. So people are questioning how.
Well, no, the vaccine worked, but some people aren't taking it. The ones that get very sick and go to the hospital are the ones that don't take the vaccine. But it's still their choice. And if you take the vaccine, you're protected. Look, the results of the vaccine are very good. And if you do get it, it's a very minor form. People aren't dying when they take the vaccine.
What about the masking of children? That's a big one for moms right now.
I think it's a terrible thing. I think it's a terrible thing.
That flies in the face of science. The kids have a virtual 0% chance of dying of COVID, and yet they're insisting on these vaccine mandates. I mean, I'm sorry, on these masking mandates, and now even the vaccine mandates for small children. And what's going on there?
I think what's happening is you look at the masks where Fauci and a lot of other people said masks don't mean anything. All of a sudden he becomes a radical masker. I don't like to see the kids with the masks on. They're sitting in school. They have a hard enough time sitting in school.
Looks like China. I've been to China.
And yet China's education system's a hell of a lot better than ours. You know what? They're rated number 2 or 3, and we're rated number 44.
But masking children, I mean,
it's bad.
The way it looks, right? It doesn't look like a free country.
I'm against it.
Former President Trump and commentator Candace Owens, part of the episode on Tuesday of the Daily Wire show, Candace. In other news involving the former president, he has now asked the Supreme Court to block the National Archives from turning over records from his White House to the U.S. House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the Capitol. That attack by supporters of the former president trying to prevent the certification of the 2020 election and Joe Biden's victory. Today was the deadline to seek a review of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, which had rejected the former president's lawsuit this month. And in other news about COVID, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio announcing the Times Square New Year's Eve celebration next week will go on, but it will be scaled back. Attendees will have to wear masks as well. Usually, according to the mayor, there are about 58,000 people allowed in the viewing area. This year, that's going to be rolled back to about 15,000 people. And visitors can't show up until 3 p.m. Eastern, which is later than previous years. Washington Today continues in a minute.
Sunday, January 2nd, on In Depth, Civil War historian Alan Gelzo joins us live to talk about the early intellectual history of the United States, the Civil War, and the Reconstruction era. His book titles include Redeeming the Great Emancipator, Gettysburg, and his latest, Robert E. Lee, A Life, a biography of the Confederate general in the Civil War. Join in the conversation with your phone calls, Facebook comments, texts, and tweets for Alan Gelzo. Sunday, January 2nd at noon Eastern on In Depth on Book TV.
Welcome back to Washington Today, available as a podcast on the C-SPAN Now app and wherever you get your podcasts. President Joe Biden today signing into law the Accelerating Access to Critical Therapies for ALS Act. And he noted in his comments that the bill was sponsored and passed with bipartisan support in Congress.
The people spoke. Their elected leaders voted. And the president is about to sign a bill into law that's consequential. It's about accelerating hope and giving patients a fighting chance. The law invests $100 million annually for the next 5 years to do 3 important things. First, it directs the Department of Health and Human Services to issue grants that support research on the access to promising new therapies for patients who don't make it into clinical trials. This means hope for patients who would otherwise have no access to treatments that could possibly work for them. Second, it established a first-of-its-kind public-private partnership led by the National Institutes of Health and the Food and Drug Administration, the FDA, to work with academia and nonprofits and the private sector to speed the development and evaluation of therapies for ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. And third, it creates a giant program at the FDA to develop new ways to prevent, diagnose, treat, and cure ALS and other neurodegenerative diseases. This bill really matters. You know, you all know, ALS robs patients and families of so much. The immense physical, emotional, and financial toll, the loss of dignity, the loss of time. For too long, there have been no survivors of ALS, but this bill could get us closer to changing that. To Brian and Sandra, to the patients and caregivers who built and led this movement, thank you, thank you, thank you. And know this, there are countless people who, even if they haven't experienced ALS, they've experienced some other cruel twist of fate. They see you, and you give them hope as well.
President Joe Biden in the Eisenhower Executive Office building. Behind him on the virtual screen, supporters, advocates for the cause. President signing this bill to expand funding for research for ALS, also known as Lou Gehrig's disease. As the president mentioned, $100 million available per year between 2022 and 2026. The website alstoday.com writes that ALS is a progressive neurological disorder that damages nerve cells and causes disability. It is thought to affect 1 in 300 individuals. There is no cure, although treatments are available to help manage the condition. White House today also announcing that President Biden has signed into law a bill designed to punish China for human rights abuses against ethnic and religious minorities in the Xinjiang region. It bans imports of goods from that area unless individuals or companies demonstrate that the materials were made without forced labor. On Wall Street today, the Dow up 196, NASDAQ up 131, S&P up 29. The Labor Department says unemployment claims were unchanged last week, about 205,000, same as the week before, and that, though, is below the pre-COVID-19 pandemic average. From Reuters, Russia wants to avoid conflict with Ukraine and the West, President Vladimir Putin said on Thursday, but needs an immediate response from the United States and its allies on its demands for security guarantees. Ukraine is at the center of soaring east-west tensions after the U.S. and Kyiv accused Russia of weighing a new attack on its southern neighbor, an allegation Moscow denies. Putin was plied with questions about the risk of conflict with Ukraine during his marathon annual news conference, which lasted over 4 hours. That reporting from Reuters. Here's a minute of that news conference.
It's a formidable issue, and I've been talking about our welfare, healthcare, and infrastructure measures. Will they mean a lot if we are plunged in a conflict? But we don't want that. It is not our choice. This is why I responded to President Biden's proposal, and he proposed over the phone to designate responsible people to hold strategic stability talks. And yes, I believe that it is important. One of the most important pillars thereof is providing security on this track, in this area. We want our security ensured and guaranteed there. And definitely we have come clean saying that, well, there should be no expansion of NATO eastwards, and the ball is in their court now, and they should respond. And by and large, we are seeing positive traction at this point. The American partners have said that they're ready to wade into this discussion at the very start of the year in Geneva. And the representatives have been authorized. I hope this will be the scenario that will take.
Through an interpreter, the Russian President Vladimir Putin at his traditional year-end news conference. We have all 4+ hours archived at cspan.org. More from Reuters. President Biden has yet to agree to a time and place of fresh talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki said on Thursday. Psaki also refuted criticism leveled by Putin that the U.S. and its allies have been the aggressor in the Russia-Ukraine border escalation. Psaki said, well, facts are a funny thing, and facts makes clear that the only aggression we're seeing at the border of Russia and Ukraine is the military buildup by the Russians and the bellicose rhetoric by the leader of Russia. Joan Didion, writes the New York Times, whose mordant dispatches on California culture and the chaos of the 1960s established her as a leading exponent of the new journalism, and whose novels, Play It As It Lays and The Book of Common Prayer, proclaim the arrival of a tough, terse, distinctive voice in American fiction, died on Thursday at her home in Manhattan. She was 87. Her publisher, Knopf, says that she died of Parkinson's disease. She was on C-SPAN 2's Book TV several times over the years, including this in 2003, talking about her California heritage, the history of her home state, and its politics in her memoir, Where I Was From.
Can you say something about how you came to this idea and perhaps about the railroads and the water? And some of the people here are waiting to read the book.
Oh, I was such a slow study on all of this. That you couldn't tell me. You couldn't tell me that we didn't wrest this state into being with no help from anyone, right? It didn't cross my mind. I knew early on about the subsidies to the Southern Pacific, but somehow I didn't make the connection because I didn't want to, because I didn't. For some reason, I had a really need to believe in the basic California origin myth.
Which would be how? How would you describe that myth?
Well, it's really people came to California at a certain point in the 19th century, and they underwent the crossing, and the crossing was redemptive, so that everyone who arrived here was by definition redeemed, and redeemed for what was never asked. I mean, the idea of redemption for something, it was the person had been redeemed and now deserved special treatment, deserved to have manna fall from heaven.
Author Joan Didion in 2003 on her memoir, Where I Was From C-SPAN 2's Book TV and archived at cspan.org. Joan Didion, according to her publisher, has passed away at the age of 87. A Washington Post story on her death reads that, like Tom Wolfe and Truman Capote, Miss Didion was one of the few writers of her era who were instantly recognizable to a mass audience through their cultivation of an off-the-page mystique. Thanks for listening to Washington Today. For more top Washington stories, subscribe to C-SPAN's evening newsletter word for word. Just go to c-span.org/connect to subscribe. Hope you have a good night, and this programming note about tomorrow, December 24th, Christmas Eve. Washington Today will not air, but we will be back next week.
C-SPAN's Washington Journal. Every day we take your calls live on the air on the news of the day, and we discuss policy issues that impact you. Coming up Friday morning, 2 conversations about the role of religion in politics and public policy. First, we'll speak with the Reverend Jim Wallace of Georgetown University's Center on Faith and Justice, and then Peter Wehner of the Ethics and Public Policy Center. And Vice Presidential scholar Joel K. Goldstein examines Vice President Kamala Harris's job performance nearly a year after making history as the nation's first female vice president. Watch Washington Journal live at 7 Eastern Friday morning on C-SPAN or on C-SPAN Now, our new mobile app. Join the discussion with your phone calls, Facebook comments, texts, and tweets.